And so a lot of the noise that we're facing right now is going to be diminished. It's gonna calm down. Okay, so hold the fort and then keep training yourself up, keep building yourself up. Like for us, we're looking how to put AI into every corner of this business right now and to scale up our efforts and to get more professional. And at a certain point, like I believe that we're gonna be on the in the strong side of this fight. So, I think we gotta be patient. We gotta remain optimistic about Israel and the Jewish future, and we just gotta keep going and with a strong belief that the truth will win out and that the tide will eventually turn in our favor.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Recalibration. I'm your host, Aaron Herman. Recalibration is a podcast about raw, real, and dynamic stories post October 7th. Today, we have an incredible guest, Alex Traiman, CEO of JNS. If you haven't liked and subscribed yet, do it now. And I'm joined by good friend and co-host, Daniel Rosen.
Hey, Aaron. Let's get to the show.
Alex, thank you so much for joining us for Recalibration. We're extremely honored to have you. And do a quick introduction. Alex Traiman is the CEO and Jerusalem Bureau Chief of the Jewish News Syndicate and host of the Jerusalem Minute, a seasoned Israeli journalist, documentary filmmaker, and startup consultant. He's an expert on Israeli politics and the U.S.-Israel relations. He has interviewed top political figures, including Israeli leaders, U.S. senators, and national security officers with insights featured on major news networks like BBC, Bloomberg, CBS, NBC, Fox, and Newsmax. A former NCAA champion fencer and Yeshiva University Sports Hall of Fame member, he made Aliyah in 2004 and lives in Jerusalem with his wife and 5 children. Thank you so much for joining us today. Let me start off by saying that we are in a unique space, and the way that news is being reported. And post October 7th, we're seeing a real change in how news is being disseminated and ingested. Many major news sources from the AP and Reuters, which you've called biased sometimes in the past. What is the real danger when even Jewish mainstream publications sort of rely on their reporting without any scrutiny?
Aaron, Daniel, thanks so much for having me. It's good to be here. I think we can just start with a story. It's about 10 days into the war. Everybody was nervous. The IDF was getting prepared to launch a ground invasion into the Gaza Strip. And then all of a sudden, the headline that every Israeli hoped would never happen, and the headline that every pro-Hamas publication was waiting for hit every single major international news agency simultaneously, which was the IDF bombs hospital in Gaza and kills 500 people. Now, several hours later, we learned that it wasn't the IDF. It was an errant rocket fired by Palestinian Islamic Jihad. It hadn't hit the hospital. It hit the parking lot outside of the hospital. And because it hit the parking lot of a hospital just short of midnight, that there was really no chance that 500 people were killed. But that didn't stop the BBC, CNN, New York Times, Reuters, you name it, every single major publication from reporting that the IDF bombed the hospital and killed 500 people. It's in journalism, we have what's called the lead of an article, and it's the who, what, when, where, why, how. If you're only going to read one paragraph, tell me, who did it, what happened, why did it happen, how did it happen. And here in this story, as it turns out, the who, the what, the where, the how was all wrong. But all these major news organizations, the ones that every local news organization trusts, the ones that readers have come to trust and respect, they didn't bother to verify any of that information. Okay, so they just ran with the story. Now, it took the IDF and the Prime Minister's office some time because they said, we can't, we can't go against this. We can't um, correct this narrative until we check for sure. And they had to check all these points of contact, various cameras, radars, call to every single point of fire. You can only imagine there were, there was artillery, there was air, there was sea to check to make sure that there couldn't have been any accidents whatsoever. I was actually in real time contact with the Prime Minister's office and the IDF spokesperson's office saying, hey, give me the statement saying that you didn't do this. And they said, well, we can't get the statement out yet. I said, well, we're getting killed here in the mainstream media. Everybody's saying that you did it. So why don't you at least say that you didn't do it and you're checking meanwhile? And they said, listen, we're a democracy and we want to make sure that when we send information to governments around the world, that they believe that the information that they're getting from us is truthful. So we're not going to say for sure that we didn't do it until we know for sure that we didn't do it. Now, it happens to be because I was pressing them that I actually had the statements from the Prime Minister's office and from the IDF spokesperson even before they were tweeted out. So JNS, the Jewish News Syndicate, was the first media organization that was able to write that the IDF was not the ones that committed this attack and it was Palestinian Islamic Jihad. But let me take it one further. Because if you'll now, as we're speaking, as you're listening to this at home, if you'll type the words into your Google search engine, Reuters, IDF bombs hospital, Gaza, kills 500, okay, not only will there be a story about how the IDF bombed the hospital, there will be dozens of stories about the IDF bombing the hospital in the Gaza Strip and killing 500 people. Okay, that's today. Like almost 2 years later, after it didn't happen, those articles are still there. So, I think this goes to demonstrate to you what the problem is. In a nutshell.
You
And
bring up
I
something. I just want to add one thing to what you said. Is like that story is very important for a number of reasons. Daniel and I tell that story often, and it's embedded in people's minds. Like that specific story is embedded. So it's just an important, understanding that is it really does get into the minds of people, 2 years later.
Well, this was actually the strategy of Hamas from the beginning, and that's the reason why they hide themselves among the civilian population, why they use hospitals, why they use mosques, why they use schools as areas of operation, bases of operation, because they were actually hoping that the civilian counts, death counts will rise, that Israel will bomb mosques, will bomb schools, will bomb hospitals, and this will be the narrative that spreads around the world. So, the prime minister says, for every Palestinian civilian that dies, to Israel, this is a tragedy, but for the Palestinians, for Hamas, this is a strategy, right? And clearly, you can see that the mainstream media has been embedded, with this narrative. I mean, they've been doing it, really with every article punching us in the face with disinformation and demonization, for years, and it's only gone into hyperdrive. I mean, people can recall back in 2021, the last time there was a military IDF military operation in the Gaza Strip. At one point, Israel bombs a Hamas headquarters, and all of a sudden, the international media, the international community starts to go nuts because the same building that was the Hamas headquarters was also the headquarters of the Associated Press. On October 7th itself, we saw videos of supposed photojournalists, riding on the backs of motorcycles holding hand grenades in their hands, which are not used to take pictures and to send to Reuters. Okay, they actually participated in these attacks. Others were there taking pictures. How did they know that that there was going to be a cross-border raid and that they should be there, on October 7th? And what would have been their responsibility to alert any authorities that there was going to be a major offensive, cross-border offensive to attack civilians in their homes on a Saturday morning on a holiday? So We know that the Palestinians have themselves almost 2 dozen news agencies. The Qataris invest hundreds of millions of dollars every single year into Al Jazeera and the overwhelming majority of their media's coverage is meant to demonize, delegitimize the state of Israel. And aside from whoever their direct readers are, they're also influencing the mainstream media to the extent that you have a whole industry, which is a multi-billion-dollar industry, which includes all of these main publications, BBC, Guardian, uh, CNN, New York Times, all of them, you name it. Uh, this is a multi-billion-dollar industry, and the overwhelming majority of the coverage about Israel and the Middle East delegitimizes and demonizes Israel. And then they're backed by the world's most powerful algorithms on social media. So when you consider this, and then you look at the Jewish media that's trying to combat this, I mean, what's the collective budgets of all of the Jewish media? We're probably, 100 to 200 million dollars, maybe fighting against a multi-billion-dollar industry. It's a David and Goliath fight.
Well, I before I comment anything, I want to say, can I see that mug you have there one more time? That's a beautiful mug.
This
That's a
is a
massive mug. Where'd you get that from? I
well,
love it.
we do 12-ounce curls with these guys here,
I love that. If
but it's
I come
water.
to
As you
Israel,
can see,
I'm
it's
gonna
all
need one of
water.
those.
Sometimes it's coffee in here.
Amazing, amazing. You brought up this media challenge, which of course dealing with state-sponsored media is in and of itself a huge challenge. But part of what we've been involved with, Aaron and I, have been the last thing you said. You talked about social media, and funny enough, the example you're bringing is about that hospital where whenever we visit communities, which we do often, we are the example we always give is, do you remember you know when we tell the story about Shifa Hospital, about it was Islamic Jihad, and everybody remembers it, as Aaron said. And what we say at the end is, imagine if we had a network already built where we could comment on social media. Hey, that's not true. Hey, that was that was Islamic Jihad. And so we're actually working, hopefully, to be part of, the solution to try and organize individual people, because today you have your mainstream media which has ever diminished influence. Really, social media is playing an ever larger role. And so, by organizing individuals into groups, into communities, we hope that we can have an impact on that. Um, I did want to ask you a question that has nothing to do with this, if I might. Um, it says you were an NCAA champion fencer. Can you tell me a little bit about that? Because I find that to be so. How did you get into fencing, and how did that? Can you just tell us quickly about that for a minute, if you don't mind?
Sure, okay. I mean, I got into fencing by accident at Yeshiva University. I literally got recruited in my first days at campus to just come to a tryout, and I said, okay, I'll come. And sure enough, just because I was athletic, I got onto the team. We happened to have an Olympic champion fencing coach who had incredible connections all across the sport, knew how to teach, taught us pretty quickly to be, halfway competent. And, I had a couple of teammates on the epee squad. It's one of the weapons that you use in fencing. And sure enough, because our coach was getting us to compete against the best scholarship athletes in the Northeast, within a couple of years, we actually got pretty competent in the sport. And it's one of the few sports where Division 1, which means like fully scholarship athletes, are actually competing against Division 3 schools, which are schools that cannot offer athletic scholarships. And we were in the conference called the Mid-Atlantic Collegiate Fencing Association. And what would happen at the end of the season is there would be a conference championships, and the championships was a round robin tournament that would take place. It was a day-long tournament where you would compete against every other school in the conference. I think there was 14 or 15 schools in the conference. They included the U.S. Army, included Cornell, Virginia Tech, Johns Hopkins, and then a number of liberal arts colleges in the Northeast. And the conference round robin was actually at the U.S. Military Academy in West Point. And the three of us in the Epee squad, we ran the tables at the conference championships and we won the conference. And it was really the only time that the
Amazing.
Yeshiva University had a major conference championship, and particularly a major conference championship against Division I schools. So they called me up just a few years back, and they said, "Hey, we were looking back at what you guys accomplished, and we think that's great." And so they put us in the Yeshiva University Sports
Unbelievable.
Hall of Fame.
It seems anything you touch, you turn to gold. It seems that way, Alex.
Yeah, I gotta say that I had the two my two teammates were amazing, and their records were a bit better than mine even. But yeah, each of us, the three of us, were we were nationally ranked fencers by the time we were doing it for a
I had
few.
to ask you about that. It's not often you meet someone who does fencing, and then even more so the success you had. I had to ask you. So, but I'll come back to a more serious question now.
I think I
So,
got to take that out of the bio because
no, it's
No,
awesome.
that's the magic. That's the magic, my friend. Like that, like not everyone has that experience. You know, that's
I
a
think
very, yeah,
there's a lot of life lessons, by the way, that you learn in fencing.
100%.
You know,
Yeah, in
it's a
sports.
martial art, and you
Yeah,
have to
yeah,
learn when to advance, when to retreat.
yeah.
You know, it's a lot of timing is key,
Sure.
distance is key, and you apply it in every aspect of
100%
life.
agree.
Yeah.
Okay, so the name of our podcast is called Recalibration, and really what we recognized was that so many people, individuals, organizations, large and small, after October 7th, October 8th, were sort of recalibrated, had new understandings, were acting in different ways, and we set out to meet different interesting people to tell us sort of how that's happened. I mean, and I know, JNS's trajectory since 2018 has been just astronomical, um, as on its own. But I was just wondering if you could maybe share with us what you've seen in terms of your readership, the engagement, anything that you could share since October 8th, I'll call it.
Oh
Um,
my goodness. Yeah, I mean, first of all, you know, kudos to our team. I mean, we had to shift into a gear that we didn't know we had. I would say even on October 6th, we had already felt like the news cycle was just speeding up immensely, and we were at full capacity. And then all of a sudden, October 7th, and we kind of thought that, like everybody did, that we were going to be in a military conflict probably for 3 weeks, maybe 4 weeks, or that these things never last very long before and the international community forces, Israel and Hamas into some kind of a ceasefire. And here we are. What are we, like, almost 630 days, uh, or just over 630 days since the war started. We're coming up on 22 months, something like that. Um, and we've just had to go around the clock. And I did an audit of how many headlines we were pumping out in a day on average, before the war, and that was something like 25 headlines between news and analysis and op-ed and whatever it was. And now we're over 60 headlines a day. So it's just an immense increase in the amount of output, and we've obviously had to bring in additional staff just to cope and to keep our guys from total meltdown and burnout. But instantly we saw the web traffic tripled on the site, and I think most impressive for us was on the YouTube channel where we were doing videos. We had something like 10,000
Wow.
subscribers on our YouTube channel uh, on October 6th. And, we had something like 1 million views on all of our videos combined between January 1 and October 6th, 2023. And then in October, after October 7th, we had 1.5 million views just that month. And then in November, we had an additional 3 million views. In December, we had additional 3 million views. Now we routinely have over 4 million views per month on the channel on videos, and we have over 210,000 subscribers on the YouTube channel, and that's growing right now at almost 1,000 a day. So it's uh, it's been exponential. And then in addition to that, we've managed to break through in syndication. And we were founded as a syndication service to provide articles to Jewish newspapers. And we've been doing that for years, and we have pretty full penetration into that market. Really, since October 7th, it was very easy, especially after that incident that we discussed in the beginning of the program, to demonstrate that the Associated Press, Reuters, which are the world's largest syndication providers for articles to local publications, that they're not providing the direction editorially that many publications want, especially those publications that want to support Israel intrinsically. So uh we've managed to get JNS content now syndicated by the New York Post on a regular basis, by Newsmax on a regular basis, by the National Post in Canada, which has 10 newspapers of its own. So just those three publications are reaching over 150 million people online every month. So we've really seen the uh, the online traffic grow exponentially, the video traffic grow exponentially, the syndication reach grow exponentially, and in addition, we knew that we had to get past our own platform with our message, and so we launched a very aggressive media campaign. And I've personally done well over 1,000 interviews with mainstream media since October 7th. And together with my colleagues, it's well over 3,000 interviews. So, we're honestly like we're reaching hundreds of millions of people, on a monthly basis now with our content.
First of all, that's amazing, incredible. I don't know how you have enough time in the day to do all these things and stay like sane, but um, let me ask you a question.
And
How,
to manage growth. I mean, the
yeah,
organization is like growing hand over fist right now. We've hired more people. We have to bring in more revenue. So we're in addition to being journalists, like I'm the CEO of the company. So we're
right.
managing like very steep growth in the model of an Israeli startup. At the same time, we're a U.S. based not-for-profit, so we have to have the U.S. not-for-profit strategies. We have to have the Israeli startup strategies. We have to have the journalism strategies to keep up, and I think that we're the only ones doing this job from like a high quality, really high quality, fact-based journalism that hasn't like made it its mission to attack the Israeli government day after day after day, even while claiming to support Israel.
It seems like JNS has been there forever. It feels that way. And when I speak to people who I respect greatly, whenever they tell me about where, which, news media matters, they say JNS. I spoke with Malcolm Hoenlein the other day, and he was just like, if you're going to publish an article, JNS is where you want it to be. So it kind of really feels like you guys have really risen to the top. So kudos on that. Now, I want to ask you a question about the people, right? You've seen the huge increase uptick in people deciding to tune into what you guys are putting out. What do you think that says about them? What do you think it says about where they're at and what they're looking for?
Just like to give you some examples, just in the last week, like I was talking to Dennis Prager's son, David, and everybody's praying, by the way, for like a speedy recovery for Dennis. He was
Yeah.
in an accident, but his son David told me he watches JNS every day on YouTube, like on his iPad. That's like, I was with Michelle Bachmann, who in Washington, I was just covering the Prime Minister's visit to Washington. There was a reception in the Blair House. Michelle Bachmann, former congresswoman, ran for president. She walked up to me. She's like, "Oh my God, I'm such a big fan of yours." And I was like, "What? You walked up to me because I met you a few years ago and you had no idea who I was, but now you're like so I think that there's a lot of people out there, and particularly, influencers and and major media, like Mark Levin on Fox is regularly sharing JNS articles. Um, and there are people out there that are searching for the truth, that they understand that Israel's not getting a fair shake on social media, in mainstream media, and that you've got all these other players out there, both on the left and on the right of the political and media spectrum that are out there demonizing Israel now almost on a daily basis. But I think for a lot of people, there's still a sense of morality in the world, and if you just gotta got to drill it down to lowest common denominator, like who's the side of good and who's the side of evil. It's very easy for people to say, wait a second, on the side of good is Israel, which is a Jewish state, and we're a Judeo-Christian country in the United States, we're based on these values, biblical values, and that Hamas is a terror organization backed by Iran, and that's bad, right? So I think that most people, like even if you don't know any facts, you still have an inclination in your heart to believe that there's good versus evil in a war, and that Israel could be on the side of good. So you don't understand why there's so much media out there, so much of it every day, day in and day out, saying Israel's the devil, Israel's horrible. And so people are searching. They're searching for meaning. They're searching for the facts. They're searching to understand what's actually happening. And I think that they find sources of truth, and so that's what we're trying to do, is to be a source of truth. And I'm always reminded of the famous story of the meeting between Benjamin Netanyahu and the Lubavitcher Rebbe in Brooklyn, when the prime minister at that time was appointed to be Israel's ambassador to the United Nations. And the Lubavitcher Rebbe told at that time the ambassador, Benjamin Netanyahu, that he was going into a sea of lies and darkness, and that it was his job to be a single candle amidst the darkness. And so I think that that's what we're trying to do. And the most attractive type of light, in a dark room, is a single candle. And people that are looking for light and are looking for truth, they will find it.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you fully. I think there's a true hunger. There's a helplessness and a hunger. And after October 7th, October 8th, when we saw on the streets, we saw on social media, people were searching for things they could grab onto, some type of sane reporting, and they flocked to JNS and to others. And thank God you guys were there and are there. I would say that there ought to be a way to harness this type of recalibration among people, a way to harness those feelings of helplessness and the desire to fight back and to become to have their voices heard and to do what they can, because certainly the people on the other side have been really telling their story for, I'd say, 30 years. They've been telling their story. And in many ways, the Jewish community, individuals, organizationally, they've kind of taken a back seat. And the result has been that many average, ordinary Americans who we never would expect to have extreme views have these extreme views. And so I think JNS has played a huge role in giving people sort of like a lifeline, right? And now the question is going to be, at least in my mind, how do we how does this new interest become harnessed in a way that can continue dealing with the challenges in front of us? One way I describe it is sort of, I call it like the eighth front. I wasn't the first one to say it,
Okay.
but certainly it's understood there's an eighth front here. Obviously not as important as the kinetic, warfare, but it's certainly very important, extremely important that this eighth front is dealt with in an extremely serious way. And it's actually, it's that front that's going to continue on. I call it the 15 years war that we're in, really. And so I wonder, from your perspective, um, what type of message could you give about what's going to be required in the next 10 to 15 years in terms of the stamina of individuals, of organizations, of news media? Maybe you could comment on that.
Yeah, sure. Well, first of all, I just want to say, you talk about the eighth front. I mean, it's really the front where the enemies of Israel expected to be able to win, right? It's where they've invested a lot of their resources. A terror organization like Hamas, end of the day, it can't beat the IDF. I mean, how many terrorists did Hamas have? 50,000 terrorists. They have 50,000 rockets. They have tunnels underground. They have submachine guns. They have improvised explosive devices. Day one, Israel mobilized 350,000 troops. We have F-35s, F-16s, Apache helicopters, precision guided weapons, tanks. You're not going to, in the end of the day, defeat the IDF in a kinetic war. And Hamas actually never expected to beat the IDF in the kinetic war. Where they expect to defeat us is in the international pressure campaign, in the narrative war. So like while we're prepared on the kinetic battlefield, we were very underprepared, on this media battlefield. And we're like a special forces unit, but we're being like really outgunned. And I think it's really up to all people to use whatever tools they have to and whatever capabilities they have to spread the message. I mean, that's something that you're doing. I mean, you stepped up. I think that there's a lot of people out there in the media, in high tech and others places that are just stepping up and saying, "Hey, I like." There's a call for reserves, and I don't know how to use a machine gun, and so I'm gonna use my keyboard, and I'm gonna use my technology, and I'm gonna spread the truth far and wide. And I will say, I think that we've done a better job than ever before, in a conflict, in terms of getting information out, in terms of stepping up and trying to fight back against the haters out there. Um, it's definitely, like we said, it's a David and Goliath fight, but we know that David wins because ultimately he's agile. On the one, he's smarter, and three, he's got God on his side and the truth on his side, and so we've got to hope and pray that the truth and our persistence is going to pay off. And in terms of what we need to do, I mean, we have to get better technologically. If you look at how the IDF is so technologically superior to its enemies when it comes to fighting online and in media and in social media. We're not that far ahead technologically, and I think that that's an area that the startup nation and Silicon Valley, and so many Jews, participating in this, and Israel supporters, in the high tech industries, have to invest a lot more to make sure that the truth um, can be disseminated far and wide using every form of AI and whatever tools we have at our disposal. That's something like, if we want to win the game, it's gonna be by technology.
Yeah, I mean, you said something which I think is really true, which is that they knew they could never win in terms of the kinetic war. So if you're, if you have two warring parties, each party is going to look for the weakness that the other party has, and so I think the united front of those who demonize Israel realized for a long time that they could not defeat Israel kinetically. And so they realized that, in Western capitals, on campuses, all over there, through media, through images, that's where they had a shot. And that's where they poured so much energy into. And we found, right? I mean, it was really not a surprise. It was ever a surprise, but it shouldn't have been, because we saw even in the Gaza, and I think it was 2000, what was it, 2015 or 16? It was pretty bad then too, and then everyone calmed down. But in any event, so they've punched through in that way. And now I think, so coming back to this idea of stamina, I really believe that, it's not, all is not lost as far as it's concerned. As you said, we've made a lot of progress, and that, we need to continue to fight, continue to get better, continue to utilize technology. And I think that ultimately we can and we will be successful. And one last thing I'll say is that, just like, and this is a message maybe that you could share if you agreed with it, which is that just like there's state sponsors against Israel and against Jewish people, I believe Israel ought to be a state sponsor on their own, promoting this type of effort that we have to do, like this eighth front. Like Israel, in my opinion, ought to dedicate real resources behind reinforcing, helping to develop sort of like an eighth front here and take it extremely seriously. It's not a side point. Something maybe along the lines of the Sochnut, the Jewish agency, like a non-governmental, but like like a building dedicated to it. I think that's it's part of the story here in the United States, in New York. We've begun this effort. We call it Emissary. And it's a non-for-profit technology company with the goal to combat anti-Semitism on social media through the power of people by creating a network of individuals to work together in groups. And we want to be a big part of the solution. We'll see. We hope, we believe, we know. But I believe it's a multi-pronged effort. And I wonder if you'd be able to share that with the people in Israel, because I think it's that important.
Well, I think that that's true. I don't expect, not at JNS and really elsewhere, for the government of Israel to be the one that's going to promote this. I think that there's certain areas where they can, come together, a united front to try to like when you say combat anti-Semitism, that's something that kind of like, galvanizes Jews and people that support Israel on all sides. But when it comes to like promoting a message of Israel and getting the facts and the narrative out there, one of the things that our enemies have that we don't have is the willingness and the ability to lie at will or to believe a false narrative and then to repeat it ad nauseum to the point where people that don't know better will believe it. And for us, we've got a few problems. There's a lot of different reasons why we lose the narrative battle, and one of the reasons is because we can't even agree on what the messages are. Uh, it's very Jewish, and we have our own debates within Israel about like our own government and its actions. I mean, you have a former prime minister of the state of Israel going on CNN saying that Israel is committing war crimes in Gaza.
That's just I mean, that's crazy that even happened. I
Okay,
mean,
you have a member of Knesset and a head of a party that used to be the ruling party in Israel, saying that IDF soldiers are killing babies as a hobby was something that he walked back, but when you have like such a diverse set of voices, and you look, take for example, Pierce Morgan, who's brought pro-Israel advocates. He's also brought some of the worst pro-Israel offenders. I mean, pro-Hamas like offending voices, and then he's also brought differing Jewish voices, and he'll have like people like Norman Finkelstein who are just like Jewish self-haters and Israel haters like on. And so somebody is not Jewish when they look and they see like three different Jews on a panel, and each one of them is saying something totally different about what's happening inside Gaza, for example. Like a non-Jewish person that doesn't understand the Jewish fabric, they're looking at this, they see three people all saying the different things, and they're thinking to themselves, at least two of those guys are lying, and maybe all three of them are lying. And I don't know which one's which because they all sound smart. Uh,
to expect unity is unrealistic, as you say.
it's
It's
not going
not
to
about
happen.
unity per se. It's more about finding certain, and again, they're outliers that we have to just discount them like a normal Norman Finkelstein. But there are certain common denominators. You know what I mean? That can be, and we don't necessarily have to have the same campaign or the same message. That's also a little bit unrealistic. What we really need is a method to disseminate the information. That's what we need.
Yeah,
Uh,
methods are good, but what I'm saying is the second you create a method, then all the other voices are going to use those same technologies also to disseminate their voices. And in a way, it's like you still have a problem. I mean, most of the Jewish media out there today, and I could name names, and you guys can imagine what websites these are, but they've
Name
determined.
names. Don't name names.
Yeah, they've determined that it's their role to convince the Israeli voters that they have voted wrong 5 times in a row and they've put the wrong government into office. And because they decided that they don't support this government to the extent that they think it's their responsibility to convince others that this government should be overturned. Okay, so then what they do is, this identity politics whereby every policy that the government does is wrong because it's motivated by the people that are doing it. So even if it's a like lowest common denominator that Israel should attack Hezbollah, you had articles in major Jewish publications coming out of Israel saying that Israel's got nothing to gain by attacking Hezbollah, or Israel has nothing to gain by assassinating terrorist leaders, or or starting up with Iran. So what happens is that they like Jewish newspapers and their headlines are actually being quoted by anti-Semites in like 4chan channels, or like Alex Jones and people that are on Tucker Carlson, even ones that are identifying themselves as conservative, you know saying the same things that they're reading in the like progressive Israeli media, and parroting that. So we definitely have our own challenges. So the on the one hand, yeah, like if we want to beat the bots and the algorithms and the mainstream media, we got to use technology. On the other hand, like we also have an internal problem of messaging.
Right. So jumping off and sort of that is talking about allyship. We're seeing, we look at the Abraham Accords. And how do you see, in an ecosystem utilizing the Abraham Accords to have that positive narrative? We always say it's like community organizing and technology together. And it's the Jewish and non-Jewish community coming together. And so in reference to the Abraham Accords, what are you seeing from your purview in that allyship to for this eighth front, but also having this kind of like this understanding that together we have shared values and we can unite, and eventually the Abraham Accords will expand. And if you have a story you can share also about that, would
Yeah,
be
I mean,
helpful.
there's a couple of things. I mean, I think on the one hand that the Abraham Accords like really represents a major antidote to the problem that we have in the West, because here you've got, the progressive left in America, the isolationist right in America, the European Union, Emmanuel Macron in France, others, just saying that, Israel's committing war crimes in Gaza, and, our leaders should be arrested. And then at the same time, the seat of Sunni Islam, Saudi Arabia, is talking about normalizing relations with the state of Israel. And that follows normalization agreements with the United Arab Emirates and Bahrain and Morocco and South Sudan. And there's also the possibility that other countries, whether that's Oman or Kuwait or others, and even maybe countries you wouldn't
Right.
have expected, like now people are talking about the possibilities in the future of Syria or Lebanon, normalizing relations with Israel. And what that does, it's a few things. First, it took away the Palestinian veto on peace with the rest of the Muslim world. But if if now you've got Muslim majority countries everywhere from Israel's borders all the way to potentially like Indonesia normalizing relations with Israel, while the Western world is saying that Israel's a bad actor because of what they're doing to Muslims, and the Muslims are turning around saying, actually, we don't have a problem with you, and the Palestinians are very much to blame for the problem here. So they're heaping the responsibility on the Palestinians. They're saying Israel's here to stay. We've got a lot to gain from partnering with Israel. So it really like takes a lot of the steam out of the anti-Israel argument in the West. So, so that I think that's very important. And I think that certainly we have to wait and see what happens at the end of this war. And I don't know that you're going to get to the new normalization agreements before Hamas is completely eradicated in Gaza. And God willing, that's going to happen soon, whether that's through military force, whether that's through some kind of a negotiated arrangement. But I do think that you can start to see this. And the other component of it is that the it's a bit of a wake up call for Israel, and a recognition that while Israel like believes that it has Western values, and perhaps the one of the reasons why Iran and others hate Israel is not they. This is interesting. People think that America's hated because of their support of Israel, when really it's the opposite. In the Middle East, people hate Israel because they see it as an extension of America and Western values in their neighborhood, and they don't want it, right? So I think here that I think you're seeing a lot of things here flipped on its head to the extent where Israel's recognizing that it doesn't live in the West. It actually lives in the Middle East. And the one thing that Israel and these Muslim majority countries can have is a recognition that there's a lot of flaws in Western society today, and that Western culture is not on a positive trajectory. And so this is like a real shift from of Israel from the Western world, which is in a bit of a free fall, both in Europe and the United States, towards the Middle East, and recognizing that there's a bright future for Jews and Muslims if they can put these differences aside. Many of those differences were projected on us by the progressive left in the West, and really chart a new and bright future here in the Middle East.
Yeah, I think it's that's spot on. And just for so like a final thought in closing, first of all, like whenever I get together with my family and especially my father-in-law, he always on Shabbat he prints out JNS and like articles and gives it around to people in the shul. And so it's one of those things like like your content is so incredible, and people are appreciative, and you're in this in such a big way, and you are that resource, and for the minds and hearts of the people. And when we talk about the next, like what people are going to do next on this eighth front, what is your view of what needs to happen like now, for this for this recalibration that many of us have had. What should an individual do to be part of this moment and be helpful, to do what needs to be done in this new environment?
Well, if you look at how Hamas refuses to give up, I think that should be a bit of a motivating factor for all those pro-Israel advocates out there. Like, don't give up. Okay. First of all, maybe it looks like we're losing in terms of the narrative warfare. I believe that the future of Israel is very, very bright. And you could see it that the the Tel Aviv stock market's trading, as high as it's ever traded. The value of the shekel has only strengthened against the dollar in the last several months. The people here are resilient. We've just trained a new generation of lions that have been fighting in the Gaza Strip and in southern Lebanon, looking at evil, in the face, and putting their life on the line to defend their country, and coming up with all kind of innovative techniques in order to win on the battlefield. So, I think Israel's going to be fine, and especially now that Iran and its nuclear program has been degraded and its whole ring of terror proxies have been degraded. So, if you understand that, Israel is about to enter into an era of like real prosperity, normalization. Okay. Like, the story with Israel is not over. Okay. And so what we have to do is we have to hold the line here, um, on this front. And the truth is, like, right now, everybody's hating on Israel because they think that that's going to defeat Israel. But if they see Israel come out of this war as the victor, okay, and stronger, first of all, some people are going to come back and just respect Israel. But also the haters, they're gonna give up because they're fickle. I mean, it's the same people, like on social media, one day somebody's an expert on COVID-19, and the next day they're an expert on the Russia-Ukraine war, and the next day they're an expert on the Israel-Gaza conflict. And at a certain point, this war is going to be over, and then there's going to be normalization agreements that follow, and major technological investment into Israeli high tech, into Israeli defense. And so a lot of the noise that we're facing right now is going to be diminished. It's gonna calm down. Okay, so hold the fort, and then keep training yourself up, keep building yourself up. Like, for us, we're looking how to put AI into every corner of this business right now, and to scale up our efforts and to get more professional. And at a certain point, like, I believe that we're gonna be on the in the strong side of this fight. So, I think we gotta be patient. We gotta remain optimistic about Israel and the Jewish future, and we just gotta keep going and with a strong belief that the truth will win out and that the tide will eventually turn in our favor.
I love that positive message. It's amazing. I really appreciate it actually. And again, I feel so grateful to have had you here today with us. It means the world to us. I know you're very busy, and we really appreciate it. I just want to mention, your podcast, Jerusalem Minute. I listen to it every time, all the time. I check every day for the new one, you know, but I listen to it. It's very, it's great, and I know you got so much going on, but we really appreciate
Really appreciate it.
everything you're doing. So thank you so much, Alex, for being here.
Likewise, likewise, and you asking a lot of different questions than the ones I'm usually getting asked about. What happened today in Gaza or what happened today in Iran, or so. We got kind of got to do like a deep dive into the media and into the challenges. So I appreciate what you're doing. I appreciate the app you're building, the community you're building. I think that you're one of these people out there that's an inspiration. Somebody that say was like yesterday, like before the war, I was working in this. Before the war, you weren't working in this in the same level that you're working in this now, and you said, look, I got to step up to the plate and to help my Jewish brethren however I can. And we're seeing a lot of people out there do that. So you're a role model for Jews in New York. And you know, I think everybody should figure out how they can be the role model for their community and to get the message out as far and wide as they can.
Great. Thank you. Thank you so
Thank you.
much.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.